The lute and the vihuela flourished in the Renaissance, and the five-chords guitar became really popular a little bit later, at the beginning of the so-called Baroque period, which means the end of the 16th century. In order to write the music for the guitar, musicians used the tablatures that had been originally invented to write the music for the lute or the vihuela. They used the French and Italian tablatures with almost no changes, except that they wrote them in a pentagram instead of a hexagram, for the very simple reason that the Baroque guitar has 5 strings or courses, and the vihuela and lute had 6. Guitarists used the rhythmic notation, which is common today, and their tablatures are very easy to read. There is no problem here.
This is an example of French tablature for the Baroque guitar. At the beginning of the piece, there is one rhythmic figure upon the first note of the tablature. And if the following notes have the same duration, this figure is not to be repeated to avoid an excess of rhythmic figures that could make reading difficult. They only change the figure when there is a real change in the duration of each note. This is an example of Italian guitar tablature, just like any old lute tablature.
But there is something else. The basic language, or let's say the native tone of the guitar, is strumming, rasgueado in Spanish. Strumming consists basically in brushing the fingers of the right hand over all of the strings of the instrument with downward or upward strokes with some specific rhythm. But these apparently simple movements can generate very complex shapes and combinations that make these styles as difficult and expressive as the plucking that is commonly used today by great classical guitar players. To write the music in this style, the strumming or rasgueado, several notation systems were invented, but most of them did not survive and today are known only by their names. But the 3 systems that came down to us are known as the Catalonian numbering, the Castilian style, and the Italian alphabet. All 3 of them have the same starting point. They just assign some kind of symbol to each one of the basic forms of the left hand 4-finger guitar chords, like this, or like this, or. The first system, the Catalonian numbering, uses numbers, and this system appears in the first printed book of music for the guitar, for the Baroque guitar. As I mentioned before, call it precisely Spanish Guitar by Juan Carlos Amat in 1596. This book deals only with the strummed style, and it seems that the guitar in this early period, from 1590 to to 1630, more or less, was played only, or in any case mainly, in strum style. It is almost possible to say that the guitar was a specialized instrument, and it was supposed to be played only in this way. Although this book, Guitarra Española, was reprinted many times, almost until the 19th century, which means more than 200 years, and obviously was extremely popular, I know almost no other source that uses the system of notation invented by Joan Carles Amat. These are the Catalonian numbers of Amat.
Each chord is associated with a number from 1 to 12, connected with a letter N for naturals, which means major chords, or a B for bemols, which means minor chords.
The second system is called Castilian style. That seems to have been used almost only in Spain and its colonies during the Baroque.
It consists in giving each chord a letter, a number, or another symbol to identify them.
The method of guitar chord notation that was most commonly used in the Baroque period is the Italian alphabet, Alfabeto Italiano. And although everybody gave it this name, it probably was invented by Italian and Spanish players. It appears for the first time in some manuscripts from the decade of 1590 and was used during the whole Baroque time in almost all of the books that are known to us.
This is the Alfabeto from the first book for the Baroque guitar, printed in Italy in 1606. It's curious that its author, called Girolamo Montesardo, says that this is the fundamental way of playing the guitar in the true Spanish manner.
In these three systems, the Catalonian numbering, the Castilian style, and the Italian alphabet, the chord shapes in the guitar fingerboard are exactly the same. In fact, they are the most common forms of major and minor chords in the 5-chord guitar. They just have different names in each system.
In the Alfabeto system, all strings must be strummed always, even if some of the lines in the tablature are left blank. In this case, one should play the open string. This is the Alfabeto, as can be seen in a manuscript from New Spain, today's Mexico. As I said before, the first string of the guitar is the lowest, and in Italian tablature, the first string is also the lowest line. Then it's clear that the first Alfabeto chord, called the cross, la cruz, is formed with the notes B, E, G, B, and E in the guitar, starting at the 5th string and going to the 1st. This is what we call an E minor chord. The Alfabeto letter A corresponds to a chord of G major, the Alfabeto B to C major, and the Alfabeto C is D major. It could be a little confusing for English-speaking players. Anyone who has played the guitar a little bit will recognize these left-hand chords at first sight.
It could seem curious that this alphabet begins with a cross instead of the usual letter A, but it seems that in Italy and Spain, where everybody was a Catholic in the 17th century, before reading the alphabet, especially for teaching children how to read, the teachers had to cross themselves, and so in the reading books or syllabaries, the alphabet was always preceded by a cross to remind the teacher to cross him or herself in this way. To make it absolutely clear which were the exact chord shapes in the Italian alphabet, some guitarists included a few drawings to illustrate in a graphic way the position of each left hand finger.
In this image, by the famous Spanish guitarist Gaspar Sanz, each alphabeto letter, included the cross, is connected to one little hand on the guitar fretboard, and it indicates very clearly which strings and which frets must be used. The fingers with a ring are not to be included in this particular chord, and therefore they don't have contact with the strings, but the right hand certainly strums all of the strings always.
In order to indicate how the chords must be strummed in a practical way,
guitarists use it to write the alphabeto upon a horizontal line and put some tiny little lines to indicate the direction of the strumming. The little lines on top of the horizontal are ascending strokes of the right hand, from the first to the fifth strings, and the little lines under the horizontal indicate a downstroke, from fifth to first. Later, guitarists used the common rhythmic notation with notes with up or down stems to indicate the direction of the strumming. To indicate the rhythm that has to be played in each kind of tablature, guitarists in Baroque times used the same figures we use today. This alphabeto system, although it can look a bit complicated, is in reality very simple to understand and only requires a few days of practice to have full command of its use. In fact, a very similar system, which is called also tablature, in English most commonly called just tab, is used today to write pop songs. The one and only difference between old tablature and the modern tab is that in this last one, the first string is at the top.
When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother